All right, we're going to get started tonight with our budget workshop. Cindy, you want to start, or?
Okay, the first page of your budget is, starts the revenue page. The first section is the 301 section, which is the real estate property taxes. The first three line items are real estate taxes, current, prior year, and debt service. Debt service is no longer needed because the debt has been retired several years ago. So we're showing an increase in the current real estate tax, hopefully for next year because of housing programs, projects that are going in, the new homes. And the taxes for prior, we're showing a decrease because the collection has gone up for the current. So naturally, if you keep collecting more on your current, you're going to collect less on your delinquent. The real estate property or tax claim bureau, that is what gets liened and sent over to the county for collections. But overall in that category, we're projecting an increase.
Probably only need to see. Is that better? Or? Go on. Good.
Would it hurt to be at 100?
There you go, that's better.
Yep.
See it? Yeah, and everything's in the screen too.
The local enabling tax, the 310 items, that's your real estate transfer taxes, your earned income taxes, local service tax, mechanical device taxes. I'm not sure how the board wants me to go over this. Do you want me to do line item per line item, or?
No, not initially, no, not. Unless something specific stands out or needs to be called out.
Or if somebody has a question on it.
Right.
Okay. But we're looking at an increase in that category also, in that subtotal there. Business licenses and permits is the 321 line items. That's the building peddlers permits, cable TV franchise fees. A slight increase in those categories. Non-business license, that's the road encroachment permits, slight increase. Court fines, same thing. Second page, magistrate fines, violations of ordinances, state police fines, parking violations. Overall, there's a slight increase there. Forfeits, restitutions, and judgments. That's a minor area with a slight decrease. Interest earnings, we're looking at a slight decrease, but depending on how or when you spend the bulk of the money that you have in your fund balance, that could be adjusted upwards. Rents and royalties, that's the rent of the generations. Oops, I'm sorry, I went too far. Shared revenues, that's the PERDA, liquor licenses, pension, the gaming money, foreign fire, and the Act 13 impact. Some of these, like the pension and foreign fire, some of these monies aren't monies that you really have. It's like a local, you don't have local money that comes out of that. That's the state shared revenues. Liquor permits, that's for any liquor permits that are in the municipality. Impact fees, yeah, we've gone over these fees in the past. The 361s, professional plan review fees, that's like your subdivisions, things like that. Municipal lien letters, sales of copies. Public safety, the special details, DUI reimbursements. You know, we're looking at an increase there. The increase is due to the resource officers reimbursement. We do have 3 resource officers, and we do get a reimbursement from the school district on that, and there will be an increase because of the increase in the contractual wages. The snow reimbursement from PennDOT, that's by contract. Pavilion rentals, on the next page, page 4. That's exactly what it is. It's the rental of the pavilions. Donations from private sources, we never have budgeted that in the past because we never know what donations we're going to get, if any. The only transfer in we're going to anticipate at this time would be from liquid fuels for a capital road program project. And then refund of prior year expenses, that would be any type of rebate we would get. We get some from the program we belong to for roads, for the one calls. Sometimes we'll get a rebate from workers' comp if we haven't had too many claims, things of that nature. So right now we're looking at revenues for next year in the amount of just over $10,000. To be exact, 10 million, $10,072,621. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Expenses start on page 5. Legislative body, 400. Any increase there is going to be, there's a 4% increase for health insurance. And that's really about the only increase there. Executive 401.
Excuse me, what is the HRA?
That's the, whenever you go to the doctor and everybody gets $3,000 deposited into their account to use to go.
So that went from 12.5 to 13.5? Is that part of the 4% increase?
No, everybody gets either for anybody that's married or have children has $3,000 of health reimbursement account, or a single person gets $1,500. The $12,500 you're looking at is the forecast for this year of what's going to be spent.
12,500 is 2019 forecast, right?
Correct.
2019 budget was 12,000.
Correct.
So it went up to 13.5 because of just more employees added to the program?
That would be divided by 5 of us.
Ron added insurance. One supervisor added insurance, that's why it's going up, not because of percentage increase. It's standard, it's a set amount every year. $401 is executive.
Again, you'll have the 4% increase in health insurance there. Everything else is pretty much stayed the same as the previous year. Legal advertising for legal ads was reduced by $4,000, mostly because we've been trying to get expenses into the proper departments, so some of that now is allocated to zoning and code enforcement. So the budgeted amount for 401 for 2019 was $346,000. For 2020, right now, we're looking at $333,000. So it actually went down. Financial administration is slightly up because the auditors, again, the auditors will, their price on their contract will increase, and because of, that's really it, just the auditors are in that area. That consists of 5 line items. Tax collection, there will be, at the end of the audit, there will be an amount that's in there for their commissions that they charge us. They don't, that comes off of what we receive, so there's a year-end adjustment that's made, so that's why that item's not budgeted for.
Roughly what will be ballpark?
For earned income and LST, there, it's probably gonna be roughly about 85,000. For the tax collector for their services, you have a signed contract for the property tax. That's so much per line item. So I would have to actually go back and see how many line items are gonna be billed.
Aren't we paying an awful lot for legal fees compared to years past?
Legal fees has been a line item that has steadily increased through the years, yes.
I think the most John Smith ever charged was $65,000.
Page 7, IT networking. I increased that back up to 20,000. That was decreased for this year. But we are way over budget on that. We went $6,000 over budget this year, so I did increase that back up to 5,000, back up to 20,000. Engineering services. For this year, we're forecasted at 220,000. For 2018, we were at 300,000. You know, we're budgeting 175, which is probably conservative.
Was there anything specific that was driving it to be so high?
Well, I think in that area, we have to really and take a look at, part of it is the fees that are charged when somebody applies for subdivisions and grading permits. There are some permit applications that those fees do not cover all of the engineering costs. And there's no escrows that are required for some of those. And that needs to be addressed in a fee resolution so that we can recoup some of those costs.
Are they significant or?
Well, when you have the number of applications that come through that office, probably can recoup probably around $20,000 to $30,000. That's an area that we really need to concentrate on, and there's room for improvement there.
What you're saying that
What's the offsetting line?
when Dan gives us an estimate for engineering.
When somebody, on some of the applications that come in, like for zoning variances, or not zoning variances, there are escrow fees for that. There's a couple applications that there's no escrows that are required. I'm sorry.
We're getting in this year, 26,000.
There's no escrows that are required. And sometimes, which causes a case where we're either trying to chase after people to pay for engineering reviews that are required, or it slips through the
I don't
cracks.
recall any application that comes in that they don't give that estimate based on what Dan tells us.
There are applications that come in that don't require,
Well, everything requires an escrow unless they.
no.
Well, I mean, that's how we get paid. Dan has always given us an estimate on any application before it's accepted. He says he'd tell us, you better figure $250,000 or $250 for this.
There are some applications that come in that do not
Do you know
require
of any? I'm
escrows.
not trying to put you on the spot. Do you know of any, or do you have to check with the?
I would have to sit down and look at the, there's a proposed fee resolution, and in that resolution, it has all the applications in there and proposed.
But to Supervisor Casula's point, like, the application comes in and we get an estimate from Dan on what the cost of the engineering service is. So before we go and jack up the cost of the fees, we need to make sure that Dan is accurately estimating what his engineering's gonna cost, and we're passing that appropriately on to.
Not all of the
Don, I have an idea, Don, when did we ever run short on engineering fees where he bills more than we've collected? And when did we ever collect in arrears, ever?
There's a project right now that Dan's working on, that there's no escrow. It has something to do up in South Point on a project that he's.
And again, before we go and jack up the fees, we need to look at the whole process.
Saying jack up the fees, I'm saying require escrows on everything that comes in.
But I still think that we need to look at the whole process and make sure that Dan is appropriately estimating the cost of the engineering and isn't telling us that it's gonna be $250 and then turning around and billing us $500.
We'll sit down with Dan.
Yeah, I think that's,
Don, you were shaking your head, yes, there are, we take applications and spend money.
I know
without
there
any-
are some occasions where applicants are not paying, and then we're having to track them down to try to pay for those things, so. Like with Cindy's suggestion about us revamping the fee schedule, is not to punish those that pay, it's to make sure that those that are getting a service are paying for that service, and that the rest of the
When I used to
taxpayers are
sign
paying.
checks, I always see that Dan was always, usually we're giving some money back because he'd estimate $250, he'd only bill $200, so those people.
Occasionally that will, yeah, occasionally.
Right, but I mean, I've never seen it where they didn't give money and we did work for him or authorized Dan to do work that he's gonna bill us for that we don't
let's
have
just
the money.
get the information instead of.
I'll
We'll
follow
just
through
get
with
the
him on that, yeah.
information.
Okay.
And then we can, if we need to come back and address this, we can.
General government buildings. There's just a slight increase there of $4,000. Utilities, I've increased those slightly. That's a usage variable.
Excuse me, did the 10,000 or that $900 a month for parks or for public works, that's not in this category, that's under public works? The facility for our winter storage for our equipment? Yes. That went where? Is it under government buildings?
That's under Public Works.
Thank you.
Okay, the police 410, that starts on this page. Any salary items are contractual. That would include like the sick pay, buyback, vacation pay. Special details is a reimbursable line item. That's on the first line item on page 8. What I mean by reimbursable line item is that is a detail that an officer works that the company that requested that detail pays for. So that is billed for and reimbursed to the township. So that is, if you look under the 300 line items, there's a special detail line item that we get that money back in for that line item. Health insurance, again, is up 4%. Office supplies is down 1,000 for next year. Contracted services is budgeted $2,000 more, and this is a line item that probably for the next few years is going to continue to rise. Everything has to be, with all the testing and that has to be done. That line item, you have a service that provides that. Calibration on the vehicles has to be done, so that line item's probably over the next few years is going to increase. Dues and subscriptions is up. That is due to the watch guard, the camera warranty. That is in that line item. So that is an annual fee that has to be paid.
Sydney, if you want to remind them, that's just the 1 year, because we get this, remember, it's actually for the 5-year warranties on the body cameras as well as the in-car. That pays for 5 years.
Okay.
It's what, chief? Is that the 39,000?
No, it's 18,000. That's on top of the dues and subscriptions I have yearly, but it's $18,000 for the 27 body cameras and the 9 in-car cameras. They are all up, and of course, if we have a problem with a camera, our server's down right now, and they're working on it, so it does go down quite often. It's electronics. But as a one-time for 5 years that I have to add on to that.
And that other, chief, that special detail, that was like when I was in South Fayette and I saw 2 of the CISO officers, we're like getting paid back for them filling in overtime or other time over in South Fayette directing traffic and different things? Is that what that was?
Yeah, that was a one-time thing, I think, because they couldn't handle the traffic, and it was an emergency with PennDOT. But this is like the Hilton Garden Inn. This would be Range Resources details. This would be the Lakeview Christian Church detail. Anything's reimbursable, 5K runs that we do, we always try to make sure that they reimburse us. Anything like extra people on Halloween, that is coming from the township, or any overtime details that require manpower is basically out of the township.
Okay.
$410,740, the major equipment line item includes 3 new cars. They would be 3 new Explorers. That is completely ready with all the equipment on them, ready to hit the road and go. I think it's important to remember that with police officers, these vehicles that they drive are driven 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Yeah. The mileage that they put on them, the hours that are put on the engines, there's a lot of wear and tear on these vehicles.
Do you have anything you want to add? Since
Yeah,
this is your
that's
line item?
also like labor and equipment being taken out of the vehicle, and as well as putting back in a new car. And we always try to use equipment that's able to be put back in another vehicle. That's striping. And I'd just like to add, I mean, obviously, and I'm sure some of the members were on at the time, I was unable to get as many cars as I needed. And unfortunately, these are the vehicles that are up because of mileage and wear and tear. I know, Eric, you were just out there, heard questions about the K-9 car. That's not even included. I'll try to get a fundraiser started for that. But if not, we will have to plan maybe next year for that vehicle. But I have 2-3 cars down at a time a month, and our mechanics do a good job putting them back in service. But we have warranties that are also included that definitely helps us out whenever a vehicle is down. It pays for itself.
Yeah, that ticking, I just heard on the way in, I'm surprised. You got a
It's
good-
really bad.
They filled you in, but it has been ticking, that K-9 vehicle?
I'm sorry?
Have you heard the ticking?
Yes, we've had a lot of issues with it. That is a 2013. The vehicle was bought off the lot because at the time they did not have a police F-150 available. Since then, they came out with the police rated vehicle, which is heavy duty, you know, everything around, just like the Explorers. So that's like a typical F-150 you would buy on the lot. That's why, but it's lasted a long time. It has a lot of miles, and unfortunately, it does run a lot because the dog has to be in there. And when it's running, it has to be cool or warm for the dog. So it's running all the time.
What's our fleet now, or what do we have, 12 cars? Or will we be replacing the 3 of those, or?
Yeah, so what we're gonna be doing with the vehicles, I have a Dodge Charger that obviously zoning has, I think Bill has one of my old ones too. It's the same year, same mileage. I don't recommend really anyone taking that vehicle. I know we always handed down vehicles. That vehicle absolutely has to go. We do have a Ford Taurus that the school resource officers have. I will keep that car just because I put some money into it. It has light bars. The only thing I really need to do is do some striping, and anybody that goes to Hills Elementary School knows it needs striping. It doesn't even look like a police car anymore. Everything's faded and deteriorated off the vehicle, so I have plans for that. So I'm really only releasing one vehicle, which would put us up to 12 vehicles. And again, there's been times that, unfortunately, with the vehicles being down, one of the officers hit a deer last night, so that is out of service. Obviously, there's a lot of deer running around at this time. So little simple things like that can happen, and it puts a car out of service. So that's pretty much where I need is about 12 cars. So I'm really only giving one up this year, and unfortunately, it's not going to be something that somebody could use. We could trade it in, but we just don't have enough cars.
I appreciate that, or you're talking about the Ford that you're trying to stretch out and get some money that you put into it out of it. Absolutely.
Okay, the next area will be the fire department. That starts actually on the 9th page. There is really not an area that is going to increase. The foreign fire money that comes out of there looks like an increase there, but that is dependent on what we get in from the state on that.
I was asked by Chief Poverick if we could budget some kind of money for McDonald Fire Department.
I actually had a conversation with another one of the fire department guys today, and they said they had a conversation at their meeting last night. They actually asked me to relay it because they're at training tonight. They're actually considering taking it out of their own money, so they asked us to pause on that until they figure that out, but they're thinking they're going to take it from the money that we give them and make a donation to McDonald Fire.
I mean, just for instance, they answered 47 calls with Cecil.
Yeah, so they are primary response on like King Road, Rising Road. I asked that question today. King Rising, like the McDonald's side of 980, McDonald's Cecil side of 980, I forget where else. Not just like mutual aid primary responders to that side of Cecil.
Agree, we gotta up that.
Huh?
Agree, we gotta up that. Increase it.
Yeah, we can. Let's pause though and have a conversation with them about whether they want it to come from us or them. But that's definitely something to consider.
The next section is the contribution to Southbridge. That is the same as it was for this year.
And we willing to increase that somewhat?
I would for sure, yeah,
I wouldn't mind doing that.
We gotta keep them,
yeah.
there's 24/7, we got basically almost free ambulance service for the residents.
Yeah, I definitely would.
Insurance companies are squashing them.
How much were you thinking?
Yeah, but they took me from my house to St. Clair, charged $1,200.
Yeah, but
And
they
I know
probably-
other people.
But they probably only got $100 out of it.
No, I had to pay that.
How much were you thinking?
We should double that.
To 50,000?
Don't they do a subscription?
No.
That's peanuts though. It's what, $30 a family if people participate.
I participate, I give more than that.
I know one of the things, and this is not budget related, that they've really been looking for is for us to try to work out some sort of agreement where they can improve the facilities they have, but they can't because of the rule where we can't bind future boards. So maybe we could increase this a little bit and try to ask Gretchen to figure out how we can help them.
Use that towards that.
Yeah. So,
Technically, once we give it to them, if they improve the facilities, that's nothing that's not our concern.
right.
I mean, South Fayette gives them nothing.
I would like to I mean, I know it's selfish, but I'd like to see them service Cecil almost exclusively. What if we increase it a little bit now and then see? Is there a majority of board support for that? Eric?
I am for it. I wanted to go back or come back to it if we could and just look at everything as a big picture.
That's fine.
Sections 413 and 414 deal with the code enforcement and planning.
So the money you took away from the advertising would be showing up over here, is that correct?
There's a line item for professional services that'll be it'll be included in there. You know, again, we have to make sure that we collect what we need to collect on applications, so that items like that are paid for by the applicant.
So 2019, you had 14,000. Then the forecast was 7,500. So this would have increased at 7,000, or you carried it over to this then?
The forecast for this year is 21,000.
I understand, but based on your subtractions that you took it out of the executive 401 category. And we could look at that later, but you had it at 4,000, you reduced it down 14,000 and reduced it down to 10,000 as a 2020 request.
Yeah, because we need to really start watching when we receive applications to make sure that we're collecting what we need to collect, so that the money we get in is used to offset some of those expenses. So that would help offset also, you know, the applicants if they need to, if a zoning application needs to be advertised, or if there's a conditional use hearing that needs to be advertised, that the applicants are paying for those applications to be advertised.
Right.
Other public safety, 419, there's no changes there. Animal control, there's no changes there. Recycling, there's really no changes there. That is the leaf collection and electronic recycling. Public Works starts at the bottom of that page and continues on to the next page. Wages are again contractual. Health insurance again is up 4%. Shop supplies, there's a slight increase there, but that's just the cost of things that are going up. Small tools, again, a slight increase there. But that is, he lost his office manager, so those increases are made up for there. The lease for the building that you just approved is there under 430, 383, lease of building.
Can I jump back just one moment? If the board doesn't mind. I remember signing checks, so it was under the recycling, but was it a $8,000 a year to dispose of our leaves? Or the leaf pickup that we have and then we disposed on, do you recall? Is that a yearly program, or we take them somewhere at McDonald and give them money to turn over the leaves?
Yeah, it is a yearly program. We're required to participate because some time ago, the DEP, Cecil Township passed a burning ordinance, and part of that burning ordinance was that you couldn't burn leaves, so the township had to provide an alternative. The alternative was to recycle them, which has become costly. And yes, it is. I don't know what the expenditures have been over the past years. Cindy, do you know?
So I recall maybe, was there $7,000 or $8,000? That was that fee, and I always wanted to ask if, geez, Bill, or if we could do something internally to become certified. I mean, let the other communities bring their leaves, and we have the equipment to turn the leaves over and to allow them to decompose, but I mean, maybe it's something we should look at just doing internally instead of paying that out elsewhere.
We don't have a stationary. Yeah, we don't property.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the provisions, though. It has to be a DEP-approved certified area
Right.
that recycles. I think Mount Lebanon had one, a multi-municipal. Of course, that's too far for us to go.
I'm just saying that may be something that we look into, or when we're dumping leaves in McDonald, paying them $7,000, well, we have Countryside, and we have the equipment to turn things over and become certified.
Now,
Maybe let the other communities come and bring their leaf collections here.
Some communities have resorted to actually charging pickup for leaves, for leaf collection. I think what they'll do is they'll pick up bagged leaves, for example, but however, because it's more labor intensive to pick them up with the leaf vacuum,
Yeah,
those people will be charged, they get, I think Peter's charges maybe $75 or $100, per event, per collection event for a residence, but we haven't got to that point yet, but yeah, I mean, any ideas
think we should
to
head
cut those
there.
costs?
I don't see why we
Maybe-
couldn't look into it.
Maybe, I mean, we're not very far away from a new public works facility. When we get to that point, then we can discuss adding that as part of the new building. But for right now, I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we can't do that right now. Yeah. Right. So that's a future discussion.
Well, let's, just for the facts, maybe for the next budget meeting, if we could see what that cost was. I don't know if I
Well,
recall
for-
$7,000 or $8,000 a year.
In 2017, it was 3,600.
Okay,
In 18, that's combined with the electronic recycling, so
it's a good chance it was 3,600, because that was the amount
it was
before
probably a little
the
bit more.
electronics. Okay,
maybe 5,000, 6,000.
That was just we spent the 3.5 thousand. And that's basically, dump, food waste, recycling, fix them up.
Okay.
And we go to,
Well, like you said, you don't have the manpower to begin with. And you really don't have the equipment to grind them.
I only have the manpower to run the machine right now. I have two, big machines, we don't have enough, staff to get one.
Well, I think it would be wise to learn that process. I mean, if it means once a month to turn the leaves over and help them to decay.
More than once a month.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not in the business of
Yeah.
recycling leaves.
There's the other part of it too, is once you start doing that, what do you do with it? How do you sell it? Well, that's the goal for the guys that are doing it for a living, but, we're not in the business the sales business.
They're using it all in that silk sock. That's why wood waste is taking them.
Sell it to the
Yeah.
gardeners. It's good compost.
Also included under the Public Works would be the consideration of hiring an additional laborer.
That's already included in the budget.
Correct.
Cool.
Just one?
Just one additional.
Where's that, I missed that, where's it at?
That would be, it's in with the
Oh,
salaries.
of everybody else,
Yes.
okay, all right. I missed it.
Winter maintenance, salt, we reduced that line item last year. We're definitely gonna go over budget. Right now, we're almost at capacity for salt.
Which is how many ton, Bill, what do you think we have stockpiled that's paid for?
Oh, I would say we have, between our two locations, about 1,200 ton.
What do you think that 220 will buy?
They really jacked it up this year.
Yeah, price is
It
up.
went, 2 years ago, it was $59.99. Last year, it went to $62.99. This year, it's $65.45. Hoping to see stuff that sparkles coming out the back of the trucks. For the price we're paying. We've got some lumpy stuff in the past. They're gonna be on the hook this year for some really good material at that price. That's the highest that I've ever seen.
That's like 3,300 ton then.
Is that what it comes out to?
Yeah, 3385.
We're committed to buying 2,400. We've estimated our purchase this year to be 4,000 ton. We're required to buy 60% of that. I think that comes out to about 2,400 ton. They will allow us to purchase up to 5,600 ton.
But we already have 1,200, so the 2,400, that's close to the 36 that the
Yeah,
two,
we'll be there. I mean,
yeah.
they always scare you this time of year with the forecast. I'm anticipating something tonight, but who knows what we're getting. They're all over the place with the forecast.
Bite your tongue. I know.
Next page, page 12, traffic control devices. Bill has actually reduced slightly the amount for the purchase of street signs. And then everything else has basically remained the same there. Stormwater supplies remain the same.
In the future here, are we gonna look at, Peter's just adapted it, Upper St. Clair, that every house pays $3 a month towards stormwater management.
Can you repeat that? Every house has what?
Every house pays $3 a month for stormwater management.
North Fayette charges $6.50 a month.
I think it's a tax increase.
There are communities that are moving towards storm water management fees that they charge per household, separate than real estate taxes. It is probably an item that the engineer will likely want to speak and address the board about. I think before that is implemented, there needs to be a plan in place before you start the collection of money. I don't think that it's wise to ever start charging residents.
I'm not suggesting that.
I didn't mean that right now. I mean,
But I'm saying, like, that is something that's going to happen down the road.
well, Dan has just done it in Peters.
North Fayette's been doing it for a few years.
Yeah,
Dan did
a lot of, yeah, a lot of
Dan
company,
did-
communities are moving towards that.
Well, I mean, he's one that sets the program.
Yeah.
Well, if you have failing infrastructure, but eventually you got to fix and upgrade.
Right.
Yeah.
What stormwater would you manage? So let me just,
1,600 inlets.
step in here and just make mention of, something I recently, completed. I just did an inventory of the entire township. And we have, and you'll be surprised to know, that we have 1,563 stormwater inlets in this township. We did not count lateral crossings that only drain and empty drainage swells or retention areas. And we, as a department,
Wait,
are wrestling.
well, you didn't count the ones that drain into a retention area?
Pardon me?
What did you just
We
say?
counted those that drain into a retention.
Okay, I thought you said you didn't count them. Which ones did you say you didn't count?
We did not count lateral crossings, like on Horn Road, for instance. or-
That just opens to the other side of the
Where you
road?
have a head wall,
Yeah.
an end wall on both sides, we did not count those structures, only inlets. We have 1,563 inlets. What I wrestle with is how do I maintain those without a jet rodder or a vacuum truck? You know what I mean? It's tough to do. And we're getting to the point where we're getting more build out. We didn't even count the developments that are under construction right now. So, as a department, we're looking at, how do we, that equipment is expensive. It's, vacuum truck is $400,000. I would imagine for a jet rodder truck, we would pay about $230,000, for a jet rodder, you know, so. I have in the past had $10,000 in rental equipment, but Dawn can attest to the fact that we only get 1 or 2 visits with them, and that decreases that $10,000. They're expensive to hire out, you know, so we'll have to look at that as a community down the road. Right now, I think, you know, we're doing the best we can with what we have. And we use our sweeper truck to clean those areas. So, and the reason I spoke up on that is that's something that your stormwater management fee would address for you down the road.
I mean, I think you said it best. My opinion is this is not a topic of discussion for a budget workshop. This is a topic of discussion at a general board meeting because it involves raising a tax and instituting a plan and coming up with that before we even get to the point where we're budgeting for it. So I would say that's something for later. Sorry, go ahead, Cindy.
Next section is 437. Those are for the repairs of the trucks and equipment. The first one is for the parts, and that is for our in-house mechanics to work on the trucks. The second line item is for the equipment to be sent out and repaired. And there is a significant increase in the equipment to be sent out to be repaired. And Bill could probably address what the piece of equipment that he has planned for that. The bearing.
For next year, we have a backhoe, base backhoe that needs rebushed. The cost of having that rebushed is $16,000. Crawford Equipment provided us with that quote. We're not capable of doing it in-house because we don't have an overhead hoist to move the boom and stuff around. So that's one item right there where it's quite expensive to do. case is in great shape. Other than that, it's pretty loose as far as operating. Rattles and bangs, it's not very active in the truck. That's just one example that I have outside of what we're capable of.
The next section, 438, maintenance, repairs of roads. Those areas have remained the same. 439 is the capital road construction, that remains the same at $1 million. Bottom of the page starts the parks. Continues on to the next page, the top of the next page. Libraries, 456. There's the main contribution is to the Frank Saris Library. Then the second line item is the additional donation that you make.
There was a request last year, the year before, last year.
For McDonald's?
No, that was for, Saris Library. Did they make another request this year for some special thing?
Yes, Andrea Raymer reached out and asked for, and I can get you the details, but yeah, they had asked that remain the same for, I forget, I'll get you the details about why.
Civic and military celebrations. That includes the fireworks in use, the money for the American Legion, and then I know the board is considering a scholarship, money for the scholarship. That also includes fireworks for the festival, again, if you want to make a contribution towards that. Or pay for the fireworks for the fall festival. So that's why that line item is up. Unemployment compensation. And that comes in with pensions and insurance, workers' compensation. Slight increases in everything there,
Out of our control.
unfortunately. General liability insurance, again, we don't have control over that. Tax refunds on page 14, that's real estate tax refunds from the prior years. We do already have about $360,000 sitting in a CD for the Lawrence SOAR Fund. So if we could put another $40,000 towards that so that we have a CD of $400,000 sitting that you have earmarked for that project. And then that would leave you with $6,000 of unallocated funds at this point.
The big thing is the Public Works building.
Yeah. So so we got the appraisal for the property off of Glass Hill, and it came in significantly lower than we could have even hoped for, which is great. So there's another meeting set up with the people who own the property and our attorneys to try to negotiate terms. Hopefully, we can come to some sort of terms and move forward. If not, I'm hoping to ask this board to still take action on it, because literally it couldn't have come in better. So I asked our solicitor, unfortunately, I can't release the terms while it's currently in negotiation. It will come out eventually, but I would imagine, Tom, that would have to be a bond issue, though, to buy the property.
We've
And
got to roll in the building.
right. So, but hopefully.
And we talked about, I mean, bond issues are favorable right now, and we talked about doing something more for Lawrence, for the municipal authority for that Lawrence project.
But remember, they asked us to hold off until they'll know in what January, they
No,
said.
But if we get a.
Oh, do it
if
all
we get a
together.
bond issue, the costs are the same, we gotta factor everything we know we're gonna need in the future. It doesn't have to be this year, but, we get it now and it's earmarked, and then it just,
For sure, yeah.
so we might be looking at a $4 million bond, $3 million for the public works and another $1 million for the, Lawrence. So Don, I think that we gotta direct him to talk to our bond people and just find out what the rates are and things like that.
Well, we know money is low right now. I mean, it's a very favorable market for municipal bonds, so this would be the time to do it. The beginning of the year,
I think though, so we can
Get some
budget
numbers
it,
for us
yeah.
So we know, because if
Right.
the payments are gonna be on a 300,000 or something, we gotta factor that in, starting, well, it depends on when we get that building. If we start the building next year, we'll need some of that. Say we got a $4 million bond, we'd be touching it next year if we start.
I
the
would
building.
hope we're gonna start the
Yeah,
building
yeah.
next year, yeah.
So let's get some numbers for us, Don, but I
Okay.
know you gotta at least look at 4 million.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
It doesn't cost you anything to get those numbers.
no, right, okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, what about, we have to put that 85,000 back for the tax collector? You said they take it off of us at the end of what they, submit
That's
to us.
just a journal entry that the auditors do at the end.
But, so, I mean, so the number that we showed for real estate, it's already factored that percentage they're taking out?
Correct.
Okay, all right, I thought you said you gotta add it after the fact, we don't know till the end.
No, that's just, yeah.
Just an accounting thing. Anybody else have any other line items?
Cindy, do you have, I came directly from a daughter's birthday dinner, and I didn't bring my paperwork. Do you have that, that I called in and requested to the board, or just to make them aware of? Or did you see the email?
I have it, do you want me to pull it up?
Yeah, or if she has it, let her recite it. So the thought was, or until you do find it, the thought was possibly to budget for a Parks and Rec part-time person, a director, so that we could have someone oversee and maybe help push those things along.
That's Jack's job.
Okay, the other thought was,
Eric,
the other
is
thought,
that not Jack's job already? So you want to pay somebody another 35,000?
all right, I'm allowed to have my opinion.
I'm just telling you.
Okay, that's your opinion, very well.
I also think you need to keep in mind that we have full-time employees here that make that amount. So to hire somebody part-time to
Well, we could come
oversee-
up with a number, nothing's set in stone. The idea is just that the money would be spent and it would be coming to decisions and conclusions and say, this is what we're ready to do in the spring and let's buy this. I mean, last year's money was left in the budget. They did make some purchases for the Lawrence project, but that was, I know Frank went to the board and went to that board and said, hey, let's do this, or we're getting this.
Hold on, time out. Two things. No employee has the right to say, let's purchase anything and move forward. That's still a Board of Supervisors
Well, it came
decision.
back to the board, that's right.
Always.
And then Frank brought it back and presented, but I'd like for the
Second,
Parks and Rec
can I-
Board to be more independent and to come to those decisions on their own. And maybe that's where Jack will come in and say, hey, this is what I want you to have by February. Let's be ready to order that equipment. Let's go and target this age group of children with this equipment.
Second of all, that money wasn't lost. We moved it into a capital parks account until we
Right.
figure out property issues that we have at one of our parks.
understood. I understand.
Eric, let me talk. I listened to you talk. Let me talk. I also think that you have to remember that we have a pending grant application for bridges in Cecil Park that requires a township match. That is money that needs to be put aside and kept in the capital park. So to say that it was money that was left unbudgeted or left in the budget without being spent isn't true.
Well, was the 50,000 in there from the previous year? So our budget used to be 50,000. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, do you recall, Tom, Frank? Yeah? I'd have to look. It doesn't matter. I'm only bringing up an idea to put on the board. We're going to meet 2 other times, and we're going to talk and discuss. I'd ask that you just have an open mind for that. The other item was set up the same way you did for the parks, but set up a permanent fund for assets for the fire department of maybe 250,000. Let's take from the $10 million and start putting into the fire department for those permanent assets. All I'm saying is, just think about it. We gotta someday handle this.
We give them
can
almost
put $1 million
$200,000.
into a new building, or $2 million, and have full-time fire departments, or maybe we could start with something like this for 250,000 putting into the fire departments
We're already giving each fire department $200,000.
from the fire tax.
Yes.
So the idea would be.
Now you want to give them another 250,000?
Right, that's right. Yep. Okay, just keep an open mind. We put 3.6 million.
closed.
Huh?
My mind's closed.
Well, keep an open mind, please. We're going to have to address it, and when the fire department saves a life, that's worth a lot. We put 3.6 million into police. We got a great department, and we have volunteer fire department. So that's all I'm asking. And if we were to set up that fund that would go towards the future fire trucks, it would honor the study that was done saying we got to get our equipment up to being beyond the 20 years. The other thing I listed was, I don't know, the website improvement, or did we have a
That's
final?
already budgeted.
Do we have a final cost on what we talked about at the last meeting, Jack?
That's already in the budget.
How much is going to be increased?
Basically, for the first 3 years, it would be 10,007, because there's programming costs involved. Then it backs off significantly to about 4,700. So even if we stay with what we had, and given what they want to charge us to get not even close to what the new program would be, year 4 and 5 are much less.
That's
So
already
what is the
budgeted
initial
for.
cost? What is the first year?
Board
It's going to
approved.
be about 10,007.
And what do we have budgeted, or what have we been spending?
We've been spending 3,800.
Okay, so that's the point that I wanted to just make certain was here. So if we have the math for next time, and let's see what that is, or is that in the budget?
But it's on one.
Is that in there, that increase?
I didn't think it was 10,700 a year.
It'll come out of this year's budget, 2018, not 2019. It was supposed to be, but we can look at that, but
All right. Well,
that
let's-
is already a board-approved line item, so it would have to be.
Let's make sure that it's there and have any further discussion. I had listed as well park cameras, maybe had conversations with chief or someone, but that may be something we look into as a board. Just adding that you may have had additional panels on his surveillance screen, and maybe we look into doing that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So you want to put $250,000 for the fire departments into a fund. We right now basically have a balanced budget. Where would that come from?
I don't know. That's what needs presented to the board. Let's work on it. Let's find it. It's not a balanced budget. This is our first budget meeting. If we save one life with the fire department, then it's worth it.
It's a balanced budget. Yeah, it's a balanced budget right now.
I would ask that, please, if you would look, or let's consider or think of ways that we could maybe make that happen.
So it's got to come from somewhere. So
That's
you're
right.
saying that, let me talk. 'cause
The other
can-
thing I
let-
had-
Eric, let me talk
The other
first.
that
Eric.
I had listed, could I go over my list, and then you could rehash it up and down, whatever you like, but these are just things that the board should have been thinking about.
Eric, can we
The
talk about
park-
one thing at a time?
May I finish the list, and then you can? Park cameras, the 5,000, electronic signage, we talked about a remote location that might illustrate events that are going on in the township, maybe something at South Point, because a lot of people in the community use that to get on and off 79. So that may be another, something that would be good for this board to do. And you had mentioned the assistance for tap-in fees for Lawrence. And I don't see us addressing any of that right now.
Tom brought it up. It would come as part of the bond issue for the Public Works building.
That's not us. The municipal authority said they were going to pay for them.
No,
And
they're
we
not
get-
gonna,
No.
they're not gonna pay it. But they wanted, remember, they wanted us to
what they
commit
said
$1
to me.
million.
Well, Cindy said that she offered that we should do something or put it towards that, and that's still debatable. I don't know that I'd go along with that, just for the fact that do the all of the residents of the township pay for the 300 homes in Lawrence. So that's something that we still have to have that discussion and debate on.
We're not committed to anything.
I
And
understand.
we don't even know, the municipal authority still is out getting financing, so we don't even know what it would be.
Well, I'd like to know too what the municipal authority has in their budget.
But we know that it's unaffordable to the residents right now, the way it sits, and they're trying to find more money in,
Right.
There are a few this really isn't the place, but I've been working with Representative Ortite. There's two $500,000 grants that we're in the process of applying for specifically for Lawrence sewage, and just hoping that we can get a couple of those and stack those on, because basically it's free money.
And two,
Wait, Dawn, then just to refresh everybody's memory, bring them up to date. If we earmark, say, 300 for a building, Public Works, and $1 million for Lawrence, and we end up, the Lawrence project never goes through, how do we, what happens with that money if it was earmarked for $1 million and we don't do the project, or it doesn't go through? I can't,
You know what, Tom, I'm going to have to look at the language for the agreement between the municipal authority and the board, because the $1 million was promised to the municipal authority through an
that's a
agreement.
separate million, Dawn. They need another $1 million from us.
Well, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, I was going to say
I'm just
that,
saying if that's the case,
Right.
and I know they're working on that financing right now, but assuming we put another $1 million in a bond,
okay.
and we don't spend it, the project doesn't go through. Is that
Just,
something
you
we
mean
can
just that,
negotiate?
that's something I would have to talk, I'll talk with bond counsel
All
about
right,
that.
you
Okay.
have an answer for us in case that happens.
Okay.
Are you done?
that's all I had on the list, yes. They're
So
just
just-
ideas for the board.
Just a couple of points I'd like to bring up. That $250,000, like you've said 2 or 3 times that if it saves a life, it's worth it. But it's got to come from something else, which means it's coming from police, who also save lives, Public Works, who work their butts off to keep the roads safe and cleaned up.
I'm
It's
not
got
saying
to,
to
that's a
bring it from
significant,
there.
I let you talk. That's a
I need to find
significant,
it.
that's a significant amount of money that would need to be, basically, we'd put in a savings account for future use versus hiring another police officer or another Public Works, or getting the police officers the cars that they need right now. That's an imminent need. I think we need to make sure that we are spending money on needs and not future wants, first of all. Second of all, the $20,000 for electronic signage in a remote location, every single person walks around with one of these. Every single person. We are currently working on our website for that specific reason. It makes no sense to me to spend $20,000 to put a sign, an electronic sign in South Point, so that the people that happen to drive by it would be able to see what's going on in Cecil Township. If they want to know, the goal of the new website is to be able to look stuff up and have access to up-to-date information.
Eric, you keep bringing up about the township buying fire trucks. Why would we buy fire trucks? These fire departments function great on their own. I mean, you're talking $1 million a fire truck, and then who are you gonna give it to? We're not in the fire business.
You sat in the same class we did where that guy said that we should never, ever put money aside unless we have a policy and plan for how it would be allocated.
Okay. I believe that this needs to be a discussion had with the board, though. That either you're gonna do that now, or you're gonna have full-time fire department and spend $1 or $2 million a year. I'm thinking that a good way out of it is putting the $250,000 into a separate account, just as you did for Parks and Recreation. The same thing, it would go towards major purchases. Maybe the fire tax would allow the fire departments to creatively recruit and try to get people from Timber Run, try to get people from neighborhoods that they're not having people volunteer. Maybe they set up those housing places. Maybe they set up office space for people that can be there working their office and then be able to leave and go and help fight a fire. So maybe that's what they would use the money for, but I believe it needs addressed, and just give it some thought. Keep an open mind.
I think they get plenty of money. And if we go to, and I've already discussed this with other firemen, if we go to paid firemen, we're gonna take their salaries out of the $200,000 they get a year now.
You're gonna take what?
The fireman's salary out of the money they get now. I mean, you're saying, what, $1 million for paid fire?
Yeah.
How many guys you hiring?
I think before you're saying think about it, but I don't want to come back. This is a board discussion now. I don't want to come back 3 meetings from now and still be fighting the same fight. If there's a majority of the board who wants to move forward with that, then we'll add it in. If there's not, then we can potentially wrap this up in 2 budget meetings instead of 3.
And we are not taking any money from the police. Absolutely not.
Well, you said we had to take it from the police.
Well,
My
you've
point
tried
is-
that for a couple of years. You
No, I
wanted to
didn't.
bring the
No,
state
I
police
didn't.
in.
And don't
Yes,
go
you
there.
did.
That
Yes, you
was-
did,
no,
Eric.
It was never said. I'm allowed to question what the budget is and what that's all about, but my point was simply, what good does it do when a house is on fire to have a policeman show up? You have to have a fire department.
It actually does a lot of good
I know
because
it,
there was.
I know it does, but to put out the fire, you need a fireman.
No, you don't, because there was one of our police officers that there was a fire in Oak Brook,
And he
and
can
it was
put
our
'em out.
police officer that put the fire out.
Okay, but that's not every day, Cindy, you know that as well as I do. A fire uses a fireman, and I'm just saying, we gotta address that. I believe that it's maybe time that we address that.
Is there board support to add that in?
I don't even ask for board support right now. Could you just keep an
I
open
am.
mind and give it some thought? See where the
Absolutely
money-
not, because this is all Bill Cass talking.
Nope.
Yes, it is, Eric, absolutely.
My name is Eric. How do you do?
I'm
This
telling
is-
you.
This is my thought. I went to
No, it isn't.
the Harrisburg.
That's smart enough.
I went to the
Okay.
Harrisburg conference for the supervisors.
Okay.
And I saw from townships and municipalities that had over 10,000 residents. And this was a huge concern of theirs, was the switching and leaving and trying to maintain volunteer firemen. It's just a challenge. And some of them did make that jump, and they ended up putting up a building for $2 million, plus they're putting $1 million into paying their firemen. It's just an issue. Well, we may have to do something with a fire department that has trouble getting people out in the daytime. Maybe we need to listen to that fire code officer and maybe put something in place that says, hey, here's, use 6 months and try to get a system in place that you can go to fires in the daytime.
Nobody's jumping up, so if there's not board support to add it in, we're not gonna add it in. That's what it comes down
Did you
to.
take a vote right now, or what?
I'm
sorry.
asking.
No, he didn't ask, he didn't even say, he didn't want a consensus yet.
I'm saying, if you want time to think about it, that's fine, but I don't want to drag this out. If there's board support to consider it, then we'll consider it, but if there's not, then we're just going to let it die. And I'm not saying in the future, but we keep doing this where we're throwing money away without any future plan. We have a meeting tomorrow night with the fire departments. We don't even know, like, are they going to consolidate? Are they going to stay separate? Are they still moving forward with their building? Before we even get to the point where we're putting money aside in a budget, we have to know what our plan is. So again, like $250,000 is a lot of money, even in a $10 million budget.
It's the same amount that we spent for Parks and Recreation. It's the exact same thing. But I love the parks too, but I would stand on the fact that that would be money well spent with the fire department.
It's not the same thing because we already give each department $200,000. So you're asking for an additional $250,000, which would make them $850,000, well, $880,000 because we also give them $30,000 in retention. So you're asking for nearly $1 million to go to volunteer fire departments.
The 250, then anytime anybody asks me, I'd say, I'll look through it and see where you.
250.
To find it, yeah, I mean, if it's to be found, we gotta look, and I'll look.
That's all. That's all I ask. Let's address it now and let's,
Anybody have anything else? All right. When is the next meeting? I forget. Do you remember when the next meeting is? 20th. Thanks. The next meeting is the November 20th at 7 PM.